Now, boys and girls, it's time again for...
There's only one radio station that connects you to DePaul University.
I don't know, I just enjoy it.
Chicago.
My kind of town.
And the world.
I guess it's just because you're different somehow.
It's Radio DePaul.
You hear me?
Chicago's College Connection.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. You are listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection, and this is another episode of Movie Swap, a show where I, Garrett Neal, and my co-host Mary.
Hello.
Say hello, Mary.
Hello.
We swap movies every week. One of us will pick something that we're passionate about. The other one's a lot less familiar with. And then we'll talk about it and see what their experience was. But today, for the first time ever, we have some guests on the show. So, yeah, it's very, very exciting. Two very special guests. Guest number one is single-handedly responsible for the creation of the show Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, and that is my sister, Kinsey Neal.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. So happy to have single-handedly manifested the resurgence of this cult puppet film with a multi-million-dollar reboot in 2021.
Yep. And our other guest, longtime friend of my sister and the leader of the Tom Cruise's Legend fan club, Ned Schweikert. How are you doing, Ned?
I'm doing great. This is the first time I've been the friend of any pod. I also would like credit for introducing Kinsey to Dark Crystal.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that. Yes,
I didn't know.
Ned and I lived together for a year, and during that time, I really just learned a lot about film criticism and that I can watch movies that are bad and know that they're good.
That is the heart of film criticism to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's true. I saw a dumb tweet on Twitter where tweets usually are. And it was just oh, I'm so annoyed because my boyfriend only wants to watch movies that are only like an 80% or higher on Rotten Tomatoes. It's there's a whole world out there of great bad movies, you know? So since we were having guests on, of course we had to let the guests pick the movie. Mostly it was Kinsey. But
as soon as I learned that Garrett was doing a podcast about movies, I did strongly imply that it wouldn't be a real movie podcast without discussing this film.
Yeah, so as we alluded to with the introduction of both of our guests, we'll be talking about Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal this week. So Kinsey, why don't you give us a little intro to this film?
Sure. Okay, so we open on a scene of a very funky looking castle, and we have arrived in Thra, which is an alien planet. We don't know if it's a part of our universe or not relevant. So we see these, we learn that something has been amiss on Thra for quite some time, and a big event is about to happen. We meet these creatures called the Mystics, who have forgotten what their rituals mean because they've just been around for so long. So basically, the Skeksis are another alien race that live in this castle.
You're making this so much more complicated than it needs to be.
Okay, you're right.
It does front load a lot of information.
We learned that a crazy cosmological event is imminent on Thra, and then we meet some of the residents of this planet, including a gelfling named Jen, who is with his dying master, who is one of these mystics. And he has been raised by them and learns of their ways.
This is the first 10 minutes of the movie right here.
Well, there's a lot of backstory there. Okay, so basically Jen knows that Jen knows that something is about to happen because his master told him that, but he doesn't know what, and he doesn't really know who he is. And luckily, he runs into another creature that looks like him.
You haven't even mentioned the crystal yet.
It's the titular role.
They don't know about the crystal yet.
Yes, the crystal's like the first thing they mentioned. The crystal cracked,
fractured,
and
the fracture of the crystal is what gave rise to the Gelflings and no, not the Gelflings, the Mystics and the Skeksis.
That's like the first is like, oh,
wait, hold on. No, the Skeksis exist before the crystal cracks, right? Isn't that the
they
whole plot of
emerged
it?
from the crystal.
Clearly, you haven't even watched the TV series that explains all of this.
Excuse me, I didn't even.
Okay,
I
actually-
never see this movie until I was told to watch it, and I watched it last night, and I'm forever changed.
Okay, yeah, something that's amiss on Thra is the Crystal of Truth, aka the Dark Crystal, has been fractured. But the Gelfling didn't know about this, so I was saving that for
literally
later.
the master shows him this image of the crystal shard and is like, you need to get this thing.
The Gelfling doesn't seem to know anything in this movie.
No.
The Gelfling's not the smartest.
Okay, so it's a classic hero's journey.
Yes.
Jen, big heart, head empty, just journeys through the woods knowing that he has to save Thra, but he has apparently never met another creature on this planet. Eventually he is told about this like all-knowing creature / mother of Thra named Ogra that somehow the
Ogra.
Mystics did not inform him about. And she okay, wait, Ogra or Agra?
Agra.
I think it's
Agra.
Babe, they say the name out loud.
That's fair. Okay, so Ogra gives them a lot more information about the crystal and tells them that the Skeksis are evil and in the castle, and so that they need to bring the shard to the crystal. Luckily, she just has the shard.
I know.
So for those who have never heard of this movie, if you thought that was going to be a big part of the movie, it is not. So all Kira and Jen need to do. Kira, by the way, was not raised by Mystics. She was raised by Podlings, who are a
Potato-shaped.
They're based off of potatoes. I read that on Wikipedia.
Not sure how to say this diplomatically, but they are a less intelligent than Gelflings species on Thra, but she still seems to be like doing great and like knows what other creatures on her home planet are, unlike Jen. So they venture towards the castle with the Skeksis, and the Skeksis, I really saved the best for last. They are the most evil robot bird aliens that I've ever seen in my life. And I believe that the creation of these creatures was really the only reason to make this movie, and we can get into that later. So the Skeksis have these like evil beetles called the Gartham to protect them, and like that does cause some trouble for Jen and Kira along the way, but not much, as this is an 80-minute movie. So they do arrive at the castle, and if you can believe it, they heal the Crystal of Truth. And at the very end, it is revealed that the Skeksis and the Mystics were at one time one race that ruled Thra. And in their arrogance, they decided to take energy from the Crystal of Truth, which shattered it and really things up for Thra.
By the way,
We're not
no
allowed to
cursing,
curse.
please.
This is a PG-13 podcast, as I learned.
Really goofed things up for Thra. And it is
Sorry, I could just do
implied-
what I did when that Mary cursed that one time. Just put like a nice foghorn over it.
And we do then learn that there used to be a lot more Gelfling, and they did all have to die because of the choices that these overlords made to drain power from the crystal.
Kinsey, I believe you missed the most important character in this entire film. That really cute, really aggressive.
Fizzgig.
Oh yeah, one of the many characters that Kira knows about is a like dog-ish creature called Fizzgig.
It's like a tribble with a mouth.
Yeah.
And eyes. You know.
It's like a Puffle from Club Penguin.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, the Skeksis are about as evil as you can get. They are like draining the life force of the living beings of Thra in order to turn from like shriveled up raisin alien birds to like a little more plump alien birds. There is a transformation scene that not that transformative. Still ugly and evil looking.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's, I think, okay, like when we were, because I watched this with Kinsey and we were like, we should try not to talk about the show as much as possible. But like, honestly, it's like hard to like the show does like everything this movie does, but just like it's all so much better.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about both Jen and Kira is really they have no character development at all, other than just like being really good and saving.
Hey, Jen learns a lot about Thra. He learns a lot.
From Kira.
Kira is a competent being.
Yeah. Which is valuable. But really the most we know is that like the Skeksis are pure evil. And hate each other, hate everything else, have no regard for life, but also nothing to live for. And what's interesting is the mystics, who are like cosmically their foil, just like have done nothing meaningfully good in a way that counteracts this.
Yeah, it's
which leads
I
to
always
some big questions.
it was always so strange. Like even watching the movie the first time, I was like questioning like they're presented like in this like really angelic way, like they live in this like beautiful courtyard and there's always this like angelic harp music playing and they're all, you know, wearing these like white monkish robes, you know. Mm-hmm. But it's like they're easily, I mean, I wouldn't say just as responsible, but almost as responsible as the Skeksis for what's going on here. But the movie's trying to like, it's like,
well, there's a prophecy, so there's nothing they can do until the prophecy is fulfilled. It's not their problem. It's all on one
where'd the prophecy come from anyway?
That they allowed the Skeksis to kill off almost entirely, except for the one that they raised.
Okay, this is something that Garrett and I latched onto like right away, is how real is this prophecy? Because it may be real to the mystics, but they seem to know almost nothing about Thra based on the way Jen was raised.
But it was like a Gelfling prophecy, because remember they found the like Gelfling ruins and it was like written in the stone on the wall.
So really the mystics are doing none of this. Like they're not even really keeping it alive. Like Jen can read it because they taught him how to read, but that's literally the only contribution they make. Yeah. Other than like pushing him off at the start.
And they're all pictures, so he probably could have, or Kira could have probably figured it out.
Like
there's a picture of someone putting a shard back in a crystal. Like it's not that hard.
No. Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, but like specifically what is prophesized is that like the way to bring these creatures back together is by healing the crystal of truth. But the Skeksis, in my opinion, could have avoided genocide if we had come up with some plans in between the splitting of the crystal and the conjunction. But
you know,
it's just me.
So you mentioned the hero's journey. That's like one of the first things I wrote down when like Jen was introduced. I was like, this is just solidly like point by point the classic hero's journey, which is why there's so many similarities to like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Because like literally when the mystic, his master, dies, it's literally like a Force ghost in Star Wars and stuff. He just dissolved. And that was very unnecessary how they caused the Skeksis to die and have him just like creepily decompose. That was not necessary.
That was so good. That's like one of the best scenes in the movie.
I agree with Garrett.
No, it was one of the best. It was good, scenes. But it was so gross.
Perhaps, but very difficult to animate.
Yeah. So I do want to say, so I had never seen this movie before, and the first time I watched it was last night, and this was also my first Jim Henson movie not related to Sesame Street or the Muppets. So
you haven't seen Labyrinth either?
I never saw Labyrinth. I didn't, and I know this isn't Jim Henson, but I never really watched The Neverending Story. I haven't really watched many of these kind of darker puppet movies. So this was a really intense experience, honestly, to watch for the first time. And I did enjoy it. It was like a lot to take in, but just the artistry is so cool. And some of my favorite parts weren't even like the main creatures. It was like the puppets in the world, like the creatures, that just showing scenes of the nature of Thra was just so beautiful and so cool to me. So I did really enjoy that aspect of this movie.
If you like isolated everything, there's probably a solid like 10 or 15 minutes worth of shots in this film that are literally just things creatures in Thra that are otherwise unrelated and unnecessary to the plot of the film.
Which frankly,
there's a
I'm
lot of
okay
just
with.
I mean, like Kinsey said, it's, you know,
It's
after she took
piece.
15 minutes to explain the plot of the movie, that the story is very basic, and the characters besides the Skeksis are pretty uninteresting, but the world, it's just very cool that they created this, because like even Labyrinth, you know, which came out 4 years after this movie, this was 82, that was 86, like Labyrinth is like anchored by Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie. And, you know, most other puppet movies, you got like a handful, even like most of the Muppet movies, they got at least one or two human characters in there. And this one's just like, it's all puppets. And like, you can tell like the Gelfling not only is like Jen just have like no character at all, but there's not a whole lot of range of facial expressions on the Gelfling
he's
puppets.
made of felt.
Yeah, I'm but like
But yet it took 4 people to operate a Gelfling puppet. And it just like doesn't show.
Look. Kermit the Frog has plenty of emotion. And the Gelfling don't. Yeah, the Skate, like all the other puppets have like a decent range of emotion. It was just the Gelflings, they hadn't quite figured it out yet. You know, it's like if you go back and watch Toy Story, like Andy looks horrible because they just hadn't quite, you know, figured out humans yet. But the thing about Toy Story is that they're like, okay, well, since we can't do humans, let's like not make Andy the main character. Whereas like Jim Henson's like, all right, Gelfling, we're gonna focus on them, and it's like maybe like wasn't the best decision, but
well, I don't know.
Puppetry
I
is
think
still
we kind
really
of don't
impressive.
focus on the Gelfling. Like, we don't need to, we know that they're the good guys, and that's enough to, like, get us through. And the rest is just like, oh my god, look at all these other cool puppets we can bring on screen.
Yeah. And I also, like, don't know that, like a blank slate character is, like, not uncommon in movies, just because, like, you can project, like, they look human enough, you can sort of project on them. But, like I think it would be a lot more of a challenging movie to get through if, like, you have to look at it like a Skeksis doing all this, or like some of the like creepy bird, you know, like just have some creepy bird monster that's supposed to be your protagonist. Like I think having it be the sort of bland but like more inoffensive human like Gelfling is actually like the way to go with this one. Unless you want to go like completely zany and do like a podling or something.
That would I would be so down for that. Like podlings, I think, are still fairly humanoid despite their potato origins.
Well, let me tell you, their life essence does not get the Skeksis very far.
Oh, that is something that you did completely neglected to mention.
That's not true. I mentioned it as part of how cartoon evil they are and how they were misusing the crystal.
I will say,
I wanted to cruise through this extremely simple story so we can talk about everything else.
How did that work out?
Well, poorly. But this is my first podcast.
I will say the puppetry, like, regardless of the like facial expressions, is just so cool and so impressive. It's like absolutely insane. And I love the one thing I've seen with a puppet that like truly impressed me before this was the play War Horse, where they had a horse, like a full size horse puppet directed, like people were in it, but like they got the movement so specific. It looked like, even though you could tell it was a puppet, they studied and were able to move it like a horse, and it like, so you could buy into it. And that's what they did with this, especially with the Gelflings. Like they definitely look and move more human like, versus the Podlings, which moved like the Muppets. They did that like kind of bouncy running thing that I could like, I remember Muppets doing when they move. So I don't know. And the Skeksis like moved in a really creepy way, and it just was, the puppetry is really amazing. And those massive, like, the things on stilts.
Yeah.
The big,
like the Landstriders.
Horse
I
catfish
think that's what they
thing.
were called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Landstriders are incredible. But there are entire people inside the Skeksis puppets and the Mystics puppets, which is incredible to me.
Yeah. And like...
Yeah, I mean, that's again, that's why you watch this movie, is because it looks cool. I like, honestly... And it's also
like, because it looks so cool, like Ned said, like you kind of don't need them to have like written character development because they're enchanting to look at.
I know, well, obviously you don't need it, but I think we have seen, I mean, granted there was like a passage of time in this that like enabled slightly, you know, more detailed puppets and a little bit more like effects and stuff like that. But even so, like the story, I think, is much stronger in like the series than in the film. And so it's not like, it's like the story was like good enough that like it makes this watchable, because there are plenty of films that are meant to be like effects showcases that like aren't really watchable just because they're like really not fun. But like it could like I enjoy personally watching Labyrinth a little bit more, because even though like the puppet work isn't quite as showy, it's just there's a little bit more going on, you know.
That's actually,
whereas
I recently rewatched Labyrinth recently in the last couple of weeks, and as I was watching, like I the entire time I was thinking the Dark Crystal is just like so much better than this.
Really?
Because I feel like Dark Crystal, like, because it doesn't have to be like tether itself to the human performers. Like in Labyrinth, I think it's sort of dragged down by like, oh, we got to show off David Bowie, and like, oh, there's a baby in here, and you know, like, whereas Dark Crystal is just like really like free to go as crazy and as puppety as it wants. So I think also just like keep like also just like having it be that sort of it's a very like fairy tale setup where it's like it's not complicated. Like the Skeksis just like are completely evil. Like the Gelflings are completely good. Like there's no need for like nuance, because it is just that sort of like archetypical, like, you know, I mean, like it's like a hero's journey, and that sort of allows the more complex like world building to shine, I think, because you have all this like random stuff, right? Like, you know, just the shots of Thra and, you know, Agra and her orrery, and it's just like everything is like going on, and you don't have to like worry about the plot being like insanely deep at the same time. So it's less of a cognitive load.
The like, planetarium thing that Agra had was so cool. I love that. Yeah. Like when they walked into that scene, I was like, oh, that's so cool.
And this is can we talk about just like the Skeksis character design and also like their castle and everything like that for a little bit, because they just, I mean, Jim Henson designed these characters first, and I think it shows. And I just love, the first thing we see is the castle. And it's a painting in the opening scene, but they do build many real sets. And I love it so much. I love that it has like weird like rocks grown on top of it, but still does not look authentic to the landscape. And I love that there's nothing in it. I love that the Skeksis costumes are like just like extremely ornate, but like they have nothing other than their like banquet table.
Yeah. It's, I mean, that was like something I had not noticed like the first time I watched it, and Kinsey pointed out to me, is it's really just like black walls, you know. They've got, you know, what's their like, they got like their army of
the Gartham,
which I get, like, it's interesting that I guess like at the end we've just like totally thrown, I think Kinsey did such a great job detailing the film. We've just kind of thrown out going through the film in a somewhat chronological order, because Kinsey pretty much said everything that happened.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But like the Gartham, I guess, were just like empty husks that were like held together by the power of the crystal or something. I always thought they were like actually like they were like another race that like the Skeksis had enslaved, but I guess they weren't, because they just like fall apart. They're crystal,
artificial. Yeah. Sorry, I'm on the Dark Crystal wiki right now just to do some fact checking.
Okay. Wow. Performance enhancing internet usage.
Yeah. which is so interesting. Like, I think this movie could have gone from like incredible to outstanding if I wish that and maybe it's just because I've seen the movie so many times, Mary, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Like, I feel that the reveal that the Mystics and the Skeksis are one would have been a little more interesting if like Jen had felt some kind of like betrayal at like learning that. And I think that he doesn't, because I think that the Mystics are like wise, but they're not good. Like, as said, like the Gelflings are the good guys in this.
Yeah, I don't know. The end scene was a lot, because I mean, I truly was not expecting the puffball to get kicked into the lava, and then there was the reveal that it was like it saved itself, and then Okra saved it. Like, that was good, but Kira just gets stabbed, and I honestly wasn't expecting her to full on die, just like towards the end, because I mean, I don't know, it just seems so straightforward, and like the good guys were like gonna be okay. She would be captured or something like that, and whatever. But like that was like jarring to me. I wasn't expecting. I also was watching this like after midnight, so I was tired, and so everything was jarring to me. But it was, and like obviously she was saved at the end by that power. But yeah, I figured that they were this like the same thing, that they were connected, because like the hand got cut. And then the guy burned up, and then one of the Mystics just burned up, and they all looked, and they just kept walking. Like some of the ways they showed it was just so funny. I couldn't even be shocked by that reveal, because it was just so ridiculous.
I really wanted to put just like a little like a cartoon like bubble burst sound effect when they're walking, and it just like does, and just like.
But the fact that they all just stop, look, turn back, and then keep walking like nothing happened was honestly just the funniest scene to me.
Like, well, there goes Ned.
I feel like if we wanted to read into this, which frankly I think any close readings of this film are unfair, because I do think it was just created to be a vessel for extremely cool puppets.
Yes, I agree.
But it's
you gotta dig deeper always. You cannot go too deep, Kinsey.
I mean, it's a really bleak look at people in power. If like the most evil side of them just like continues to rule and act as like, I mean, they're like, okay, not everyone in power like literally sucks the life force out of other living beings. The like quote unquote good in them just literally go out to pasture and wait for eternity to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that right after this quick commercial break. Yeah.
Oh, it's the radio.
This is Movie Swap, and you are listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.
Wish you could bring Radio DePaul with you everywhere you go? Well, now you can with the Radio DePaul mobile app. Download this easy-to-use, free app from the App Store or Google Play to listen live. With the portability of a phone and the simplicity of pushing buttons, Radio DePaul satisfies all your audio needs straight from your pocket. From the main station to sports, news, and podcasts, your entertainment options are endless. Download now and try not to break your phone in excitement.
This message brought to you by Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.
What's up, y'all? This is Jeremiah.
What's up? This is Steve-O from Jackass. You're listening to Radio DePaul.
Radio DePaul.
Radio DePaul is Chicago's College Connection.
Welcome back to Movie Swap here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. I'm Garrett. I'm here with my regular co-host, Mary.
Hello.
Say hi again. and two special guests, Kinsey and Ned. Hello.
I was worried you wouldn't introduce me the second time.
Yeah. and we are continuing our discussion on Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal. And when we last spoke, left off on a emotionally charged cliffhanger where Kinsey was talking about maybe some of the deeper readings of The Dark Crystal and how it comments on people in power. Did anyone want to comment on Kinsey's comments?
Well, I was discussing this with Kinsey earlier, just sort of when I was getting my thoughts together for this. And I mean, I think there is the sort of the obvious reading would be just like where, I mean, not obvious, but like the one I came up with was where, you know, the Skeksis as like this sort of like capitalist like power class where they're like exploiting the environment and like draining it of its resources, and then the mystics being this sort of like academic like theoretical class where they are like nominally in opposition, where they would sort of disavow what the Skeksis do in speech, but not actually like do anything in not actually like follow that up with any like real actions. So they're sort of like sitting in their little huts in the desert, just being like, well, that sucks, and not actually like forming any meaningful opposition. You know, like Kinsey said, like literally like they could have prevented genocide. Like it was fully within their power.
Fair to note, like this took place over like 1,000 years. It's not like it was like blink of an eye type deal. I mean, like
armchair theologists, basically.
Yeah, but so it's sort of this like idea where the mystics are too like they're too mystical, like they're too much defined by their sort of sense of ritual, which, you know, at this point also by the time the movie starts, even like they're like forgetting what their rituals even mean, and that's sort of the only thing they have. And so then at that point, what's left for them to do but like go on a long walk and die?
Yeah. And this also like doesn't help Jen very much either. Like he is prophesized to be the savior of the planet, which the mystics have some idea of. And yet he is completely unprepared to like take a stroll across his home planet.
Yeah, you think they'd be like, hey, like, do you want to watch out for these like giant like cockroach monsters? You know, like they will try to kill you. Like we know that they exist, and we know that they will be used against you.
Since you can't fly like some of your race can, do you want to learn how to ride these like land striders, which can get you places fast?
Do you want to meet this ancient being that's going to help you in the future? That's apparently approachable. Like,
well, they do tell him to go meet Agra.
No, I mean just like
now.
in the 1,000 years leading up to that point. Like,
okay, well, Jen was not alive for 1,000 years, but
your buddy, like, okay, he was alive for more than one. So
she definitely could have been like a co-tutor.
Yeah, exactly. He could have been like gone there, learned about astronomy, learned about the convergence, learned about all the mystical stuff he needs to know about for this. Like, also,
and you think at some point someone would have told him like, by the way, you need to put the shard like in the crystal, because that's like actually a major plot point where they don't know what they're supposed to do with it. And like fortunately it's like pretty obvious, but like what if he had to like recite something while he did it, you know, like just no one was giving him instruction on this.
I laughed so hard when he jumped onto the crystal and then just dropped the shard immediately. I was like, you had one job and you couldn't keep a hold of this shard. And then Kira gets killed. And I'm just like, what just happened?
It was just a little whoopsie.
But it's like, okay. Catch it. I guess Kira had good aim, as we know, because she took down that bat from like a mile away. That was awesome.
I mean, right? I feel like that is like the essential to any chosen one narrative. Is there just like has to be a female character that's way more competent that the mission couldn't have been accomplished without, but she is not the chosen one.
Yeah,
and often dies.
Yeah. Whoops! Hey, it was 1982.
It was. Yeah, and she's healed, so
that's true. But I was gonna say, we can't talk about like the mystics and kind of their like complications in terms of like how they're presented versus like their actual role in the world without mentioning Agra, who's come up several times, who seems to have almost especially if you watch the show, but I think it's also pretty shown in the movie, who also has like almost even more like real power and magic almost than the mystics do, and has apparently been like sitting in this hut for 1,000 years. And again, like Kinsey said, like literally had the crystal there, but I guess like Jen was the only one who could figure out like which of these various crystal like things was it, because like he
played a note
is the chosen one.
Yeah.
Well, that is, I was unclear watching it whether she was like, oh, I don't know which one it is, like as a test for him, or as like literally she had no idea, because
I feel like she just
he
didn't
does
care.
find it, she's like, oh, looks like you like you did it, like congratulations, but like in a way that's like, I was expecting you to like meet this challenge.
Yeah,
that's fair. But I feel like that's almost worse from her perspective if she had it there, and then like then it again becomes like a you know, Dr. Manhattan type thing where it's like Agra's just like so powerful. She's like, well, I could solve these problems for these, which like this isn't like exactly like Dr. Manhattan, but just like she's like so powerful. She's just like, well, I'm gonna be like their guide, but like I can't actually like solve these problems, even though like she is clearly holds like a threatening like the one person that the Skeksis truly fear is Agra, which is shown like the one scene where she actually ends up in the palace and just like she just gives them again like a stern talking to, like, oh boy, I'm really gonna give it to you guys if you don't, you know, do whatever, or you don't let me leave. And it's like, why couldn't she just grab the thing and just put it back?
It's Agra's sort of like relationship to the Skeksis like is weird, because she like has this like detente with them sort of, where it's like, even I mean, I know not to talk too much about the TV series, but like even in that, like she sort of like can talk to them on their level, as like they won't like really try to kill her or like do more than inconvenience her or like foil what she wants to do, but at the same time she is not really willing to just like save Thra by herself. And I wonder if that's sort of just like because she is like a projection. I don't remember the cosmology of Agra, but is she like a projection of Thra or something, where she like you know, it can't heal itself sort of thing?
Yeah, we really don't get that in the movie, but in the TV, which I think is a big part of why the series was able to get made, is there are just like so many questions about these very compelling characters that are not even begun to be addressed in the movie itself. But I think like she is the first and only of her kind, and is like very much connected like deeply with the spirit of Thra and to the crystal, but somehow her life force isn't helpful for them. It's very ambiguous, but I think basically it is that like Captain Marvel defense, and that she's just like too powerful, and like we could like never understand like all the complex things that like she's managing day to day, which I mean, if we wanted to, like, it's not just the Gelfling that the Skeksis like steal. Like this once like thriving like green planet is largely a wasteland when we're not in those like beautiful landscapes full of like greenery and secret monsters. And so like she could have been like restoring ecosystems.
Sorry, just one of the things that I was noticing as I was rewatching with all those like sort of shots of the landscape was that there's very like strong sense of anima to everything, where it's like everything is moving. Like you have like plants that are like moving their vines, and like at one point there's like tentacle things that like can bounce around even though they like look like they're plants. So nothing is like stationary. Everything sort of has that life force in it, which I think is an interesting way of conveying just like there is like this sort of like energy to this planet that is more than what you would find on Earth.
Yeah, I think Kinsey made an apt comparison when we were watching it. She compared it to Pandora of the James Cameron blockbuster Avatar, soon to have a sequel coming out. I know everyone's very excited about Avatar 2.
Many sequels coming out.
Yeah, of course. Avatar 5 2026 is, really, that's what's keeping me going right now. Pandora tried to do a similar thing where like, oh, everything is like living and it's, has its energy of its own. And then like, I guess its big thing was like bioluminescence or something, but it was just as well done in some ways as the almost entirely CG, or I honestly think entirely CG world of Pandora was. It was just so much. I mean, you can like everything in those sets was real, and it was.
And also in contrast to Labyrinth, which relies a lot more on computer animated effects than Dark Crystal.
Really, I wouldn't. It has, to be fair, it has been a while since I've seen Labyrinth, so I don't even remember that.
I mean, I think that
sort of stuff,
has a lot to do with the fact that the puppets have to interact with people, which is hard.
Probably, yeah.
But this is, I mean, really until the very end, when there is allegedly green screen, we're seeing built environments that are big enough for entire people to walk around and underneath. Or paintings.
Well, that is one of the like particular strengths of Dark Crystal that I do really like. I mean, we've talked a lot about this, like the puppetry, but like also just like the sort of the richness of the world and like the amount of detail and care that goes into like all of the sets. Like I'm someone who does quite enjoy a lot of the like really terrible 80s like sword and sorcery stuff where you have a lot of these fantasy sets, but they're way less committed. It's usually like, you know, like you're shooting in someone's someone's backyard or in like a forest or something.
Like Legend would be, I think, an example of that, where it's kind of. I mean, I would say Legend would be one of the ones that actually does also does also care about its sets, because like that was shot entirely on sound stages, so like they had to make everything in those. And there is, I mean, not to talk about Legend, but there's so much glitter involved. Like that is the budget, the glitter budget alone for that movie is insane, like off the charts. But like with Dark Crystal, I think like I would compare it to like maybe like Barbarella or like Labyrinth is the obvious one, and or like something else where it's like there really is just like a lot going on.
Wi-Fi
and like
crashed here, sorry.
Like the background is sort of its own character, and like there is a lot of attention paid to it.
Yeah,
and when they first announced the miniseries, which I feel like we now like just like cannot talk around anymore, I was at first shocked, but it really makes a lot of sense because there is so much. I mean, most of the plot of this film is contained in skimmed over backstory. So of course there are questions, and there's so much to build on because it's all real, so it holds up.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it's really. I know we said like we don't want to talk about the show too much, but like it's really. I mean, we've seen so many prequels in recent years. You know, in Hollywood, on the big screen, on the little screen. And I think it is a credit to this film that like the prequel was able to fill out the world that this film created so easily. And because everything from the show I think fits really well. And like the one that really stuck out to me is like in one of those scenes in the movie where you're just kind of going through the jungle, there's like these plants that look like giant blueberries that are kind of like floating and moving around. And then those are like the center of a huge action set piece in the show. And we've seen in a lot of prequels, they try and fill in holes or perceived holes in an already established canon, and it's a credit to this film that it's able to leave so many openings so ripe for exploration, while also still being like a genuinely solid film in its own right.
Which this is a movie like written and produced by puppeteers, so it makes a lot of sense that the story really is in the sets and in the characters, not as much in the writing, one could say.
And I think, it is one of those movies that you can really see as like as a labor of love, whereas like there are a lot of these kinds of movies where it's like, is it the best? No, but like it, where it's like I watched recently the Roger and Hammerstein Cinderella from 1997 with Whitney Houston and Brandy, and it's like is that like like the most amazing looking movie? No, but like it feels like everyone's having fun and there's just a lot of really positive energy going on that makes it a real joy to watch. And it's like this movie is like you can just. Which, this is pretty much all we've talked about this episode. But again, like cannot stress enough how like the puppets and the sets are the main reason why you might want to watch this film repeatedly, and not necessarily because of the deep plot, although we did briefly explore kind of like there is some like nuance there if you want to look into it in terms of like the mystics and augur and stuff, but just the artistry really comes through, and that's what makes this so fun to rewatch.
I think that it's great that you brought up Cinderella, because like the original like Grimm fairy tales were clearly a big influence in this story.
Yeah.
I think Jim Henson wanted to, I mean, from reading the Dark Crystal Visual Dictionary, which I'm sure you all have, he wanted to scare children with this movie.
Yeah. He was like, children should be scared.
Probably succeeded in a major way. But I guess I wonder, like, is there a lesson other than like you can defeat evil? Does there need to be?
I don't know if there has to be like a moral. I think you can have. I think a lot of fairy tales, like the moralizing aspect of fairy tales, I think is like a later edition. Probably like even around would be around the time of like when the Grimm fairy tales got like sort of Bowdlerized. Or, you know, like what there's not a lot of lessons to learn in like. You know, three brothers go off and the youngest one succeeds. Yeah. Like that's sort of just like, oh, like some people are better than others, and like some people like will marry a beautiful princess and like others won't, and like too bad if you don't, you know.
Yeah, and like Cinderella is like if you wish hard enough, your fairy godmother will show up. And
there's like fairy tales which don't necessarily have a moral. There's just like a story about good versus evil and good wins. That's not necessarily. There's not necessarily a like personal lesson, which is different from fables, and this is definitely more of a fairy tale, not a fable.
Well, there is also, I have a collection of Grimm's like of Grimm's fairy tales, and there is literally one of them where it's a man comes home from work and his like shoe and his thimble and his like cup like just beat him up, and like that's it. Like it's just like a paragraph long. It's like they're all like, we're sick of this guy, and just like they like knock him out, and
yeah.
That's like that's amazing to me. Like that's what a fairy tale is. It's just like some completely bananas occasion. Like
it's this symbolization
just something to entertain
the working class revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes evil alien robot birds kill an entire species.
Yeah,
it can happen.
So we've got. A little over 10 minutes left here, so this conversation has been all over the place, but I think really fruitful for all of us. So as we do like to do here on Movie Swap, we're gonna close with some awards, and since you guys are our honored guests here, why don't you guys go first? I don't know if Kinsey or Ned has an idea. I mean. Whoever wants to go first, because we've all thought, you know, everyone has an idea already. We've all thought out what our award will be for this film. So.
Okay. I have one that I don't feel great about, but that's okay. Ned, if you have one that you're feeling great about, you can go forward.
I'm going to go ahead and give this the most confusing dualities award, because it is really not clear whether the Skeksis and the Mystics are supposed to be good and evil, or if they're just supposed to be like two different like complements. It's
two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and then you have there's a lot of dualities and a lot of like triplets in here in this movie, and none of them make sense. So that's my word for this.
Love that.
Are you can't give that to Rise of Skywalker and the dyad of Rey and Kylo Ren.
I don't think I'm going to be giving any awards to Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, that's very fair.
Let's focus on the movie at hand.
I would like to give this film an award for tasteful nudity. I think it's really rare that we get to see disgusting birds stripped of their clothing for humiliation and plot development. And I think that is very. This is a theme that's continued in the prequels, so clearly central to the plot. And I think it's like the perfect balance of like, okay, we see how disgusting these things really are, but we don't need to see too much of it because it's too gross.
Oh, and don't forget, the first time we meet Jen, he is also naked.
Oh, I did forget.
I forgot that as well.
I didn't realize that.
Of course. Now I've just realized we've gone through this entire episode and we never once like actually talked about any of the actually interesting characters of the film, like the Chamberlain,
We talked about Agra,
the general, or the scientist. Well, because the scientist isn't even in this that much, but
no, he's not. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So there's, for those who are just tuning in, Chamberlain is the one who's stripped naked, and he's defined. Well, first of all, he gets ousted.
Well, okay. Well, I was
community.
I was gonna give
his major
this
character
movie,
trait is sometimes going,
okay, I was gonna give this movie my favorite dumb character quirk award, because the Chamberlain's just 90% of his dialogue is just and I just, that was
People
like the
love
first
it.
thing that, like, when I watched this movie for the first time, like that was all I could think about after watching it, was just I thought it was hilarious.
It was
the dramatic trailer
so
for the
uncomfortable.
reboot ends with that noise.
Yeah.
It was extremely effective for a lot of people.
The what?
But it
ended
is
with
it
that
is
noise?
unsettling. What?
Sorry. Oh,
Sorry.
the trailer for the like preview trailer for the miniseries just ended with Chamberlain going. And if you look at the YouTube comments, people are going nuts.
Well, I, for one, am very excited to watch the show that's on Netflix, because I feel like I need to now after seeing the...
If you liked
It like is genuinely
even a
interesting,
little
I would
bit,
say.
you're gonna love the miniseries.
Okay.
Because it's just really good.
Yes.
It also has literally the single most insane IMDb like cast page I have ever seen in my entire life. It is
true.
Like, it is such a journey. It has like, it's like a ton of like random people, like Icelandic people from like the Game of Thrones movies, and like Keegan Michael Key and like Mark Hamill and like Taron Egerton. It's just like,
Of course, Mark Hamill got his
like,
hands
you
on
can
this.
tell they put so much time and money into the puppets and the sets, and they're like, and we're also gonna spend as much money as possible on the cast.
We're just gonna have like Alicia Vikander, like in this like movie about puppets, in the show about puppets.
Okay, well, I feel bad having such a unexciting final award, but my award is going to be most athletic actors award for the puppeteers. I just need to shout out the puppeteers. Like, they had to hold up their hands to support an entire puppet head for hours, and what I read that the ones on the stilts had to be like just hung in midair for rest, because it was like 70-pound fiberglass costumes that they were on. So most athletic actors award.
All right, well, after those extremely interesting and well thought out awards that we have bestowed upon this very deserving film, that will do it for this episode of Movie Swap with special guests Kinsey and Ned. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
So great to be here. Thank you so much for bringing attention to this film. It needs all the viewers it can get, because I think the world would be a better place if we all knew how cool puppets could be.
Maybe we can convince Netflix to bring back Age of Resistance.
Cancel right after the Emmy win.
The sheer hubris of them spending millions of dollars on a Dark Crystal prequel trilogy. Like, I'm glad they did it, but I don't know what they expected.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I look forward to returning on this podcast when you have your episode on Speed Racer, the best movie ever made.
Oh my gosh, who directed that movie?
The Wachowskis.
It was, okay, I knew it was somebody that was of note. Yeah, it's been a while since I've revisited that, so that will be, if we ever get there. Sorry, not to completely derail this. I was reading about them making this movie, and literally they compared their production of Speed Racer to Picasso unveiling Guernica, in that they were also like chased out of the cities metaphorically, which I think is like really, like, I think everyone should think of their art in such grand terms. Like, I think that does increase my enjoyment of their work. There you go. Next week, if you join us on Movie Swap, it will be Mary and I, along with Mary's roommate, will be our special guest that week, and we will be watching Nightcrawler, starring one Jake Gyllenhaal, which I'm terrified to watch this movie. I've been putting it off for years, very intentionally, but I gotta watch it now. So get excited for that, everybody. Thank you so much for for listening, and enjoy your Friday night.